Good evening, I'm Peter Aline and welcome to a special CBC Presents. Tonight, in association with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, we bring you part 3 of the panel discussion addressing the silent epidemic of suicide ideations in Barbados with a focus on women. The Barbados Youth Advance Corps, the BYAC, in the Division of Youth Affairs in the Ministry, is seeking to increase community awareness about the psychosocial challenges which have contributed to an apparent increase in instances of suicide ideations and suicides in Barbados. The numbers are disturbing. The WHO shares that worldwide, approximately 1 million people die from suicide every year, a figure that translates to 1 death every 40 seconds. Suicide accounts for 1.4% of deaths in the world and ranks among the 20 leading causes of mortality. In the region of the Americas, about 65,000 deaths from suicide occur each year. Tonight, with the help of our panelists, Camille Martindale, co-founder and director of Unborn Justice, occupational therapist Lennox Rochester, and occupational psychologist, mental health advocate, and HR professional Jolene King, we continue the theme, creating hope through action. Remember, you can be a part of the discussion to share your thoughts, perhaps your experiences and your concerns. You can contact us by calling 228-5562 or 228-5563. Or you can WhatsApp us, message only, on 228-5562. Or you can post your questions or concerns on our Facebook page at CBC Barbados and at Division of Youth Affairs. This special edition of CBC Presents is brought to you in partnership with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's Anti-Violence Campaign. We'll be meeting our panel and begin the discussion after the break. Time for us to meet our panelists this evening on CBC Presents. We have Camille Martindale. Camille is the co-founder and director of Unborn Justice. She's a pro-life advocate who is committed to being the voice for the voiceless and empowering generations to make wise choices. She's also passionate about youth ministry and worked as a youth worker within the Methodist Church for 4.5 years. Her passion is helping young people and the clients of Unborn Justice to identify and live out their God-given purpose. Camille, welcome. And we give you the opening remarks. You can do a little brief presentation on our topic for a few minutes, and then we will meet the others.
Okay, so I'm happy that I have the opportunity to share this evening. I work with an organization where we have women who are facing various crises, and we definitely see how the impact of mental health, how these crises severely impact on these women's mental health, and therefore cause them to have suicidal thoughts. So I look forward to sharing with the panel this evening.
Thank you. Jolene King is the principal consultant of 246 King Consulting, has over 17 years business management and international HR experience gained in the UK, the USA, and in Barbados. Ms. King has worked across several industries and sectors and has gained valuable experience and insight into the importance of health and well-being, as well as mental health. She is a trained occupational psychologist, mental health advocate, and a trained and experienced HR professional. We welcome you to CBC Presents, Ms. King.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Please go right ahead.
I'd start with my why. Why do I do this? The reason why is because I have seen that there is a huge stigma with mental health globally. We still don't like to talk about it. So talking about suicide is even more of a taboo subject. And all the while, we're losing people by their own hand. And I lost a cousin in 1995 to suicide. So that is part of my why and the reason why I'm here. And as a Barbadian, still trying to talk about it, raise awareness, get more people to talk about it. And even though the statistics show that men are 3 to 5 times more likely to take their lives, women are more likely to attempt suicide. And that is part of my why and why I keep doing what I'm doing.
Thank you. And Mr. Rochester, Mr. Lennox Rochester, is a qualified occupational therapist, and he currently heads the occupational therapy department at the psychiatric hospital. He has over 20 years experience in this field. He's passionate about assisting persons to return to some level of effective functioning in their daily living activities. Mr. Rochester is a graduate of the Brunel University in London. He has served in various capacities on a number of organizations, and we welcome Mr. Rochester here this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am. It's a pleasure to be here, to be able to share what I can. And as my CV says, I'm passionate about helping people, and I have noticed that there seems to be an increase in suicidal ideation, and whether that is passive or active suicidal ideation. And I am very, very excited to share, because we seem to be going into some form of a crisis.
I'm glad that you started with that because that was actually in my first section this evening. I wanted to find out the whole idea behind the active and the passive within the whole idea of suicide ideations, the attempts. I don't think that we managed to discuss that over the last 2 weeks, that there is a passive and an active. So perhaps you could explain for those who are maybe joining us for the first time just what the whole idea behind suicide ideations and then the suicide itself is about. Okay, I think that we just lost Mr. Rochester, so perhaps Jolene or Camille, either of you can take that until we can see if he comes back on.
Having thoughts of suicide or feelings towards suicide is not necessarily that the person is going to take their life. And 1 in 5 people has suicide ideation at some point in their life. So it's a lot more common that people might think. Passive is a lot tamer than active, so it could be a passing thought. But when it becomes more frequent and pervasive, that's when it becomes active and it is more likely for the person to make an attempt. So that's the difference. And if Mr. Rochester comes back in, he could explain that even further.
Okay, so we looked at the youth in our first program on the actual World Suicide Prevention Day. And then last week we took a look at men and their suicide ideations. What what prompts them in women? And either of you can jump in and take it.
Okay, so some of these situations that I have seen are one clients who've had childhood trauma, for example, child sexual abuse, and that is a big one, and that really impacts a woman for the rest of her life unless she really gets serious intervention. We've seen also unplanned pregnancies, and this is our area, so unplanned pregnancies that lead to crisis pregnancies. So where there is maybe an unsupportive partner or unsupportive family members, where there is financial challenges, so maybe she may be unemployed, the partner may be unemployed, health challenges, so physical or mental health challenges in the mother of the pregnant woman, and also pressure from the parents in the case of teenagers. So these are some of the scenarios that we see within born justice.
So I'm seeing then that this is within the nurturing side of the woman when that particular part is affected. Whereas when we were talking about the men, we were talking about finance and the protective part. So therein is a difference, a glaring difference immediately. Welcome back, Mr. Rochester. Did you get an opportunity to hear my question?
No, I did not hear it, and I have no idea what happened.
Well, it happens. It's called Murphy's Law. But however...
Yes, technology, yes.
Yes. But you had mentioned the active and passive suicide ideation, and yeah. I asked you if you could expound on that. So the floor is yours.
Well, a passive person, it occurs when a person actually wishes that they were dead or they could die, but they don't actively have a plan. Now, the active suicide ideation is not only thinking about it, but having the intent to commit it and really how they look at they're going to do it and formulating a plan. And that is important for any clinician who is going to be working with that person. I would say here the approach though should be calm. All right, and because what happens very often, that expression is made as a surprise, especially with the passive. You know, I wish I was dead, and that creates an alarm, especially within a family setting. If it is, say, it's a teenager or a young adult, and who are the ones that are having the major problems right now because everything that they have used to develop themselves, a lot of that is restricted. Right? So parents may tend to be alarmed, and in that, I mean, everybody will be alarmed, but in that alarm, you have to make sure that you act properly and do not introduce increased anxiety.
All right. So, sorry, I interrupted. Go right ahead.
Yes. Now, very often the passive suicide ideation is linked with sometimes manipulative behavior. For example, a teen wants to go out, and parent says, well, this is COVID is serious, you can't go out there. And she says things like, well, this body is going and the next body is going. And she continues, and then she says things like, y'all don't love me, other people love their children, but y'all don't love me, I wish I was dead. And that person doesn't necessarily have a plan, but they want to get something, and they know that from the time they talk about taking a life, attention is riveted to that. So it's a matter of differentiating that. Let me say it here conclusively, though, that any expression must be taken seriously.
Right. So we just can't say, you know, you're just saying that, but you don't really have any intentions of doing it. You have to take every case on its merit. And I must let you all know, anytime that you all want to jump in, please don't wait for me to invite you in. You know, just join the conversation. because that's exactly what it is. So we've got a short time just before we go to break, but what are some of the things that families, friends, people around you can look out for? Because I would assume that there are signs, whether male or female, but we're dealing with women today, so I would assume that there are signs that we can look out for.
There are signs, there are early warnings that you can see. One in particular is people starting to withdraw socially. When
Mm-hmm.
people get
Mm-hmm.
quiet for
Mm-hmm.
several, completely quiet, they're not interacting at all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they may start to prepare for their death. So they start giving away their possessions. They start
Yes.
talking about death. They start preparing their families by saying, when I am gone, listen to those types of conversations. When they start saying goodbye to people,
Mm-hmm.
when they say, well, and start talking about, but I don't want to be here anymore. If, for instance, there's a woman with children, as she starts talking to her friends and saying, can you take care of my children for me? All of these are early
Mm-hmm.
signs. And of course, there's this pervading sense of hopelessness. People feel as if there
Absolutely.
is no way out, and that is when they decide to take their own lives. And that's some of it. But
Absolutely.
pay attention to how people are behaving and how they're interacting, because there are subtle changes and it can happen 6 months prior to the actual act. And of course, if they have made an attempt before, that's when you really pay attention, because if they've made an attempt, they're trying to be successful. So they may just try again. So that's when there needs to be some kind of professional intervention, but the signs are there.
Okay,
The
we are going
signs are
to
definitely there.
we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to have the others make comments as well. But this evening we're taking a look at part three, and this evening we are actually looking at the women addressing suicide ideations, the silent epidemic of it, and I think that that particular phrase, the silent part of it, is something that we all need to pay attention to. And it's coming to you in association with the Ministry of Youth and Community Empowerment, and we will be right back. This special edition of CBC Presents is brought to you in partnership with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's Anti-Violence Campaign, building awareness, promoting behavioral change. And tonight we have our panelists, and with us we have occupational psychologists, occupational therapists. They're all mental health professionals, and we're looking to focus on the women. And I noticed that we've been joined with Fabian. Good evening, Mr. Sargent. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Peter. Good evening, Barbados. It's always a pleasure.
Excellent. And we have to thank Mr. Sargent. He's the one who, through the Barbados Youth Advance Corps, has organized the discussion and the whole series surrounding the addressing this silent epidemic. And we were looking at some of the things to watch out for before we went to break. And Jolene had shared some with us, and I think that the others, because I'm sure that there are more. When you're looking at personality changes, you mentioned that briefly, but am I correct in thinking that if a woman is usually quiet and passive and she becomes a bit more aggressive and filled with anger, or vice versa, that those are things that we can also look out for, behavioral changes?
Yes.
Yes? Anyone you can,
Yes.
you know.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Sudden changes.
Okay,
Okay.
And just to add to what was said before, now I just want to mention a little bit about the biology, all right? Which is females secrete something in copious amounts called oxytocin, and what that does, that makes them resilient to stress, okay? Now, and it makes them more bold, all right, and they seek information. Now, the female sense of self is generally built on self-sacrifice, and what happens when you start seeing behaviors related to unbearability? I cannot bear this anymore. Unlovability, nobody loves me. I'm doing the best I can, and nobody's loving me. Nobody's appreciating me. Unsolvability, this is too much for me. It cannot be solved. And these are the things which then manifest in the behavioral changes that we see, especially with females. So you have the attempts at regaining some attention, because it cannot be dealt with. They're given and they're given and they're given, and they're getting nothing back in return. And this creates a very, very, very serious and daunting situation.
Okay, I'm going to ask something which I usually get a little annoyed whenever people talk about women. But how much of a role do hormones play as well in this?
They play a role. If you think about women when they reach menopausal stage, their body are not functioning the way they are used to. And that is the age group that is at higher risk of suicide for women. So it does play a role. You're not yourself at all, and you can't make sense of how you are feeling. And all of that will play a part on somebody's psyche and mental state.
Yeah.
So of course it plays a part.
Right.
It can't be ignored.
The reason why I said that is because they use that as an excuse for everything when it comes to females.
Of course.
And so therefore you know, but this is the one time that they would be correct in saying that.
There is validity in it, yes.
All right. So Camille, when you are working, and I would assume that you work with younger women, especially within your organization, what do you find when interacting with them?
So we work with actually women of all ages.
Oh, okay.
We work with women of all ages, and even I just spoke about hormones just now. One of the big things that we see would be prenatal depression, so depression during pregnancy, and then postpartum depression. So after birth, and of course hormones play a big part in that as well, along with the situations that they may be in. And you had asked about what the persons look for some of the things that we see would be a woman who, you know, is accustomed to taking care of herself, but then she's not grooming as she usually would. That's something that we see a lot, a lot, a lot. And then things like loss of interest in the things that they were interested in before. So they may just be staying home and not doing anything. Very irritable, which may be due to the hormone, which is due to the hormones as well, along with the other things that are happening. And then crying a lot. So crying a lot during pregnancy and postpartum are things that persons can look for in their family members and friends.
Postpartum depression is something that we don't know a lot about generally, unless someone you know has gone through it. Perhaps you can share with our viewers just what postpartum depression is, and it is real.
Yeah, so postpartum depression is a complex mix of physical, emotional, and behavioral changes that happen in some women after giving birth. And it usually happens around 4 to 6 weeks. So there's something called baby blues, which is normal, which happens around 2 weeks, where women may feel a little sad, they may cry, and they're not sure why, and that's normal. But postpartum depression now is more severe, and this happens 4 to 6 weeks. And in the case of postpartum depression, she may even have urges to harm herself or harm the baby. So in cases like this, medication is needed and medical intervention.
And this is definitely a time where you have to be vigilant. When you see certain signs, you have to get that person
Definitely.
help.
Definitely.
Yeah, I see, Mr. Rochester, you were nodding.
Yes, I did, and it's important to be able to read the signs. Now, in terms of the hormones, I want to pay attention to the adolescent female. And as we know, adolescents can go up to 25, so we're talking about the young adult as well. And with their copious amount of hormonal changes which affect behavior in that situation. And very often, those young females do not feel, and listen to me carefully, they do not feel understood and they do not feel heard. And very often they feel that their concerns are dismissed. So they have no other choice but to do something, because they're not heard, so they are not relevant. And someone said that to me once. I felt that I was no longer relevant. And that's a very, very serious stage to be at.
And that's where the suicide attempts start.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this particular part of the discussion. So we'll be right back. You're watching a special edition of CBC Presents in association with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's anti-violence campaign, building awareness, promoting behavioral change. And just before the break, we were talking about postpartum depression, we were talking about prenatal depression. As a matter of fact, some of the symptoms of suicide ideations for women. And one of the questions I have is, if you think that your sister, your aunt, your cousin, if you think that they want you know, to commit suicide, can you ask them?
Absolutely. Have an open and honest conversation, listen, no judgment, none whatsoever, and find out what's really going on with them. Because the last thing you want is to just leave that person with their thoughts, because their thoughts are becoming distorted and skewed.
Yes.
So that's where you
Yes.
do want to intervene and have the conversation. You'd be amazed at what people tell you.
Really? They will be honest with you. They won't hide. They will admit it.
They may or they may not, but there's nothing beating trying. Actually try to get them to open up, because if they don't, then the situation will only get worse.
So it's a myth.
But it's
then.
not about harassing them.
Right.
It's about giving them the safe space in order to open up and speak about what is affecting them.
Right. So it's a myth then that if you ask them, you're putting that in their minds.
It's a huge myth. And another myth is when somebody's talking about it, they're not serious. No, they're serious. So you need to pay attention.
Right.
There are a lot of myths around mental health and suicide in general that we would love to dispel.
Can you
So
share
this
some
is
of
a
the
good forum.
others?
With suicide, if someone has tried, they're just looking for attention. No,
because-
the person's in pain. Yeah. People don't cut themselves or overdose just because they are trying to get someone's attention. They're in pain and they want to end their lives. That's what that's about. Another myth is, I can't think of anyone on the top of my head. Maybe the others on the panel can add to the list that I've just given.
Mr. Rochester, can you think of one that you would like to dispel?
There's the whole thing surrounding, is the person serious or not? And a lot of the myths are surrounding that. All right? Now, also, it may not only take one conversation, it may take a series of conversations in order for that person to develop trust and to start talking about things. Right? Now, the thing is, one of the myths include, I give them everything, they got nothing to want to kill themselves about. And very often families or the significant others do not understand the pain the person is going through. It is significant to them. It may not be something that you identify with, but it's something that is so potent for that person that it is causing them unbearable grief, and they want to be gone with it. They want it to be gone in the quickest and in the most effective possible way. And that is something we have to pay serious attention to.
Right. We've been looking, I think, at, if we want to categorize them, at the symptoms and perhaps the causes. But then, how do we get to a diagnosis? Because if we're going to be listening, if we're chatting with them and saying, well, you know, I think that you need to talk to someone who can help, then is there a diagnosis that occurs that you say, well, this person is someone that we need to keep an eye on?
Once it's referred to the specialist, there are suicide ideation questionnaires and other tools and psychometric tests that can be used, but that's entirely up to mental health professionals. So for family member or colleague or friend, it's just about identifying what you see as the early warning signs and getting them professional help. After that, it's just being part of their support system.
And as an occupational therapist, what role does one play in the whole treatment process?
One of the key roles is identifying the motivation behind the suicidal intent and identification of alternative solutions. And that is a process. And what we do, we assist the client to develop problem-solving skills, one of which can be described as a patient safety plan template, which looks at things like warning signs, including thoughts, images, moods, situation. We have them identify the internal coping strategies that take their mind off the thoughts. And then there are things like what can you do, distractions, and so the things you can do, or the people you can contact, and then who you can call for help. And that is designed with by the client, with support from the therapist, because the client is encouraged to take responsibility for their own situation as well, right? Along with that, you can identify positive goals and interests to increase motivation. Um, Help the person to identify positive personal attributes and support systems. And this may include something like a review of past successes, and a key thing, engage in activities that produce successful outcomes, um, especially those with a visible end product. And that is engaging them in task or craft skill based activities which they can complete, and which gives them reinforce the feedback that I can and I am. All right, and
Yeah.
then you can engage in activities which relate to expression and validation of feelings, and you also encourage physical activity, which has a positive effect on mood. But overall, you're developing skills and you're increasing functional performance, which is critical to that person's continual functioning.
All right. I I remember that one of the um, causes or symptoms was abuse. And when you
Hmm.
speak of, you know, within the environment and so on, I guess family and that sort of thing, if that's what is causing your trauma, then how then can you get help from within that environment? If you understand what I mean.
Well, it's said that childhood lasts forever. Every experience that we have had, we carry with us for the rest of our lives.
Hmm.
And if it's
Hmm.
traumatic, even if we have blocked it and put it and regressed it, it comes through in our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions. So, really, the best gift that an adult can give to themselves is to get some therapy, because then that's where you can unpack all of that trauma and live a functioning life, which will help with your mental health and minimize any negative thoughts which you may have to be a fully functioning adult.
Right.
And
And
that's
Yeah.
a simplistic view of how to deal with trauma at any stage.
no, it's an interesting thought. And Camille, one of the questions that I have for you, because I know that I think you are, and correct me if I'm incorrect, you are pro-life, I understand, in terms
Yes.
of right. Okay, so how then do you work spirituality and faith and so on within the healing process?
Well, that's an interesting question. For those clients who are believers, we definitely we believe as Christians in the power of prayer, the power of God to heal, and so on. We also partner with the mental health professionals for professional counseling and so on, and just provide that spiritual support along with that.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Just reminding you that this special edition of CBC Presents comes to you in association with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's anti-violence campaign, building awareness, promoting behavioral change. We'll be back. This evening on CBC Presents, we are addressing the silent epidemic of suicide ideations, and we're taking a look at, with a focus on women, and certainly some interesting discussion from our panelists this evening. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing that the time is just flying by. And one of the questions that I do not want to leave out is the whole question of sexuality. I think that we did not touch on that last week, and that was one that I definitely wanted to touch on. How much does that play a role in one's sense of self, and perhaps in some cases a sense of hopelessness?
There is the confusion prior to the acceptance, so that can affect someone's mental state. And then, of course, we're talking about minority groups.
Yes.
Minority groups are disadvantaged. Disadvantaged groups are always more at risk than those in the majority in all different aspects. And we're talking about suicide. So yes, that is another risk factor. So we're talking about women. And if we are, let me see if I get my letters right, LGBTQ plus community,
Yes.
there may be an A that I have forgotten, I apologize. But yeah, they are disadvantaged groups, and therefore that is another risk factor. I know you've called them causes, but we like to say risk factors because
I
there's
do beg your pardon.
yes,
Okay.
yes, risk factors. So
I'm
those are some of the
learning.
risk factors
Risk
for
factors.
suicide.
Okay, we have a WhatsApp message from one of our viewers, and it says, what if I was raped and my husband doesn't want to raise the child of the rape with me?
Ooh, that's heavy.
Extremely heavy. Let me make a stab at it, because immediately there will be discord within that relationship.
Of course.
And if the mother decides that she's gonna keep that child, there will be continual reminders of the event, the traumatic
Of
event.
the violation, yeah.
There, right. If she decides that she will terminate it, there will be ongoing stuff. It's not going to obviate anything at all. So that's a tough decision, and both of them would need some very intense work in order to kind of to deal with that situation.
What would be your advice for her at this moment?
Seek help very, very, very quickly. That's what I would say. Seek help, and with someone who is versed in dealing with situations like that.
Yeah.
And that would be doing some quick homework in terms of looking for a psychologist who can help.
Yes.
Psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, counselor.
Psychologist, psychotherapist, whatever.
You were saying something, Camille?
I was just going to say that it really is a difficult situation, because if she does not have the support of her, if she decides to continue the pregnancy and she does not have the support of her partner, then that is a difficult situation for her in terms of, dealing with the situation on her own. And then even in the case where she feels pressure to terminate, where we've seen cases like that, then it's also an impact on her as well. And we've seen cases where women, felt pressure to terminate, whether it was because their partner did not want to, did not want the baby, or where in the case of like underage girls where their parents forced them to terminate, and they then had to deal with suicidal thoughts and depression and PTSD and so on. So it really is a difficult situation on both sides. So she would definitely need, as Mr. Watata said, psychological support to work through that situation.
Well, so I hope that answers your question, ma'am, and I certainly hope it helps, and I certainly hope that you get the help that you seek. That's a difficult one. All right, so looking at the time, I'm going to ask you to just, as we wrap up, because we want to chat with Fabian just to find out about how the sessions have been going. So as we take a look at the final thoughts on suicide ideations with women, I'll start with Jolene first.
Okay, suicide ideation, 1 in 5 people. However, I will say early intervention is the solution. If you are starting to have suicidal thoughts, if you're starting to have negative thoughts, address it early. Be mindful of your self-care. And if you need, there's no shame in feeling the way you do, and seek professional help as soon as possible.
Thank you. Camille?
Yes, as Zoe said, early intervention, seeking organizations where you can get that support. In addition, also peer support, tangible support if it is a case of, financial challenges and so on. So seek those organizations that you can get the support that you need through the situation that you may be in.
Thank you. Mr. Rochester?
Okay, I'm going to direct my comments at the significant others and not necessarily the individual, although it endorses what's being said. And I want to say to the significant others, listen, listen, listen. Take every expression of suicidal intent, suicidal interest, whatever you may call it, as take it as important, take it as serious, and follow up with some very, very clear and direct intervention so you can save a life. And ask a question, because asking a question or a series of questions may very well save a life.
Thank you very much, sir. And we have a very special edition of CBC Presents tonight in association with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's anti-violence campaign, building awareness, promoting behavioral change. Our panelists certainly this evening have, I think, cleared up a lot for us and brought out the differences between the male suicide ideations as opposed to the female. And after we take a quick break, we're going to chat with the organizer of this particular series, and also he's a social development consultant and a professional social worker, and also part of the Barbados Youth Advanced course. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Fabian Sargent is the social development consultant. He's also a professional social worker, and he's also founder and president of the Men's Empowerment Network Support. And it's an honor to have you with us tonight, Fabian, and congratulations. This series is definitely, personally, I found very impactful, and I think that the knowledge has been very helpful, and the response that we've been getting on the road, on the street, has certainly reflected that. So talk to us about the anti-violence campaign. Where are you all at now? And I understand that you will be having sessions tomorrow for men on suicide ideations, and then the ladies will be next week. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm here as program officer of the Barbados Youth Advanced Corps. I know you called out a number of other titles, but I'm an officer within the ministry.
Yes.
Yes. So as part of this entire series of discussions surrounding suicide ideation in Barbados, we've thought to really cement it with education sessions, because these discussions pretty much open up the issues to the public, so that we can talk about it, we can express it, because this is a topic that people don't traditionally speak about, very taboo. So in an effort to really delve deeper into the whole education behind suicide prevention, we had a series of community education sessions, which are all virtual. So last week, Saturday, we had our first one, which we looked at youth. Tomorrow, the 25th of September, 6 o'clock, we're going to have our second session, which will look at men. And then next week, the 2nd of October, again, same Saturday, 6 p.m., we're going to be looking at women. And Janelle Chase Mears is the facilitator of that session. And let me tell you, the first session was...
Oh dear. I think that he was going to say that the first session was phenomenal, and that...
I'm here.
Okay, great.
I'm back.
You
I'm
froze.
back.
Good.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. We had a full room, and I mean, anybody who's interested in registering, you can find that link on the Division of Youth Affairs Facebook page or on their Instagram page, which is DivYouth246. And once you get to those pages, you will see the link to the sessions. You go, you register, and I'm encouraging everyone. You know, it's not just although the session tomorrow is about men, I encourage women to join, because this is an issue that affects all of us. We have fathers, brothers, we have uncles, we have children, sons. You know, I'm encouraging everybody to be a part of that discussion. And then the one for women, I'm encouraging men to be a part of that discussion as well. So please log on DivYouth246 and the Division of Youth Affairs on Facebook and click those links. We must continue this discussion, and we must continue to raise awareness about suicide in Barbados. So you can look out for more work out of the Ministry of Youth, the Division of Youth Affairs, because all of our programs are needs-based, and once we see a need to address the psychosocial issues associated with young people, we definitely will respond. Hence, that is how this program was birthed.
And it was definitely a pleasure working with you, Fabian, and also Wanda there at the ministry.
Yes, I really want to thank you as well, Peter. I mean, you did a phenomenal job. I want to thank all the discussants, all the persons. We had Dr. June Price Humphrey, Tahir Babulia, Janelle again, Kristen Hurdle. Yeah, we had Ronald Chase, and then tonight we had Camille. We had
Martindale, Lennox Rochester, and Jolene
correct,
King.
And we had Jolene. So I want to thank all of the persons who made the discussions what they were, and who really brought the awareness, who really brought the information to the public. But remember, we continue these discussions in a closed forum. You have to register, and that is going, those links on the Division of Youth Affairs Facebook page. You can click the link and register, or on Instagram, DivYouth246.
Thank you very much.
Again.
The final word was yours, Fabian. Thank you very much. And on behalf of CBC TV8, it was certainly a pleasure working with the ministry, and we will look forward to further collaboration. And you stay safe. Thank you very much for viewing. Good night.